Hello and welcome to 101. It's an absolute pleasure to have you join us once again. I am Bryce Nanakwesi Aminin, and on the show today we'll be talking about Ghana's developmental agenda. What exactly is the plan? Where are we heading towards to? And how far with our plan to reach our goal? Don't go nowhere. Stay with us. We'll be back with more. Welcome back. And so I've been joined in studio by Dr. Kodjo Mensah-Abrampa. He is Director General for the National Development Planning Commission. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And great to have you. Absolute pleasure to have you join us in the studio.
It's a great pleasure.
How's the NDPC doing? I mean, you joined since 2018. How's it been for you so far?
Very well, very well, very well. And it's doing very well. I think that given our own strategy, which we have for ourselves, we're really getting there. And we must say that we know the global situation has really hit us a bit, but we're on track.
Let's remind ourselves of what exactly the mandate of the NDPC really is. We say the NDPC. What do you do as an organization?
Yes, the National Development Planning Commission is a constitutional commission, which means that it takes its strength and mandate and authority from the Constitution, 1992 Constitution. And if you look at the Constitution, 86 and 87 are devoted for the National Development Planning Commission, the membership and also the functions. And if you look at its mandate, clearly stated right there, two major functions. The first one is to advise the president on strategic planning, programming and projects. And also the second one, in order to respond to the advisory responsibility, we are supposed to facilitate the development of development plans in the country, medium term and then long term, short term, and then also to facilitate the development planning processes for the sectors, for the districts, and for practically all institutions within the country. The other thing which is very important is for us to also look at long-term projections on the structure of the country, the structure of the economy, and how this could be supported to deliver what it's supposed to deliver, as it's required by the Constitution again in 35(7) and the others. The other key responsibility is also to ensure balanced development within the country among the districts, and then also to protect our resources as a country, to optimize the use of these resources. Again, we are also supposed to facilitate the high national development policy and spatial policy. So the land space that we have in the country, how it is managed for us to optimize our development. And then finally, we are supposed to facilitate implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of all development plans, programs, and projects that we have in the country. So basically, that's what we're supposed to do. So we work practically with the president as we advise and also report in some of our activities to Parliament as well as the president in all these processes. And then we have a commission. The commission is bigger than the secretariat. I am the Director General and I'm responsible for the secretariat. But the commission, the membership was specified in our constitution. So we have a chairman of the commission who is appointed by the president, and then we have ex-officio members, the Minister of Finance, the Governor of Bank of Ghana, the government statistician, and the Director General of the National Development Planning Commission. And beside that, we also have representatives from all the regions in the country, which means 16 in number. And then we also have selected ministers who are also appointed by the president, who are supposed to be members of the commission, and they are appointed by the president to be on the commission. And finally, there are experts who are selected by dint of their own knowledge, experience, and profession to be members of the commission. And the membership spans a number of areas: economic, social, governance, engineering, spatial planning, and gender, and other areas, science, background, environment, who are supposed to be members. So we have quite a big number. It's around, the membership is now around 40 plus. In fact, if you add the new regions, then we get into definitely 48 in number. So 48 membership. But my outfit serves as a secretariat to serve this commission. And so the commission has these functions, as I indicated, to advise the president on issues of planning, programming, and strategic development of this country. ensure use of our resources, and of course facilitate balanced development for the country. So this is what we do. And day in, day out, there are a number of tools which we come out in order to respond to these functions that we have. And I'm sure you've heard of the Ghana at 100, which is a long-term perspective view of where we want to be as a country by the time we're 100 years. That's the 2057. And out of that, we also have a responsibility to support the president in developing what we call the Coordinated Program of Economic and Social Development Policies, which emerges as a key instrument for directing and pursuing our development agenda in the country. We also have medium-term plans, which we prepare in response to.
I will come to that. I mean, the plans
yes,
on
yes.
Ghana at 100 and all that.
Yes.
But then it's clear that you have a lot on your hands to deal with.
Exactly.
But what I want to find out is, how has it been for you trying to manage all these affairs?
Yeah.
I know definitely might have some challenges. How do you deal with that? And take me through some of the challenges that you face day in and day out.
No, it is not easy, but it's up to a task that we can perform. And I'm sure that is why the president saw it in me and appointed me. And definitely once you're appointed, you need to take up the task. I think the first thing is that you're supposed to coordinate. And coordinating all these ministries and others means that you must display a real ability to be on your feet and a span of knowledge which goes beyond, basically from alpha to, the end, Z. And therefore, it requires a deep knowledge on the issue of planning and be able to be interdisciplinary in your understanding and appreciation of issues. So that is key. But I think that one key thing about the planning profession is being able to dialogue, because you need to facilitate exchange. You need to facilitate something that you cherish. You might need to give it out in order to gain something. So it's a key dialogue process. And you, as the Director General, you need to facilitate that among sectors, because every sector, every head of a sector, it comes with a mind, and mine is the best.
Is that why for the past few days you have been engaging some group of persons to educate them? What exactly has been the aim of that meetings you've been holding?
It's basically supporting the national reporting on the Sustainable Development Goals. We're fortunate our president, we have a dual responsibility here because our president is the co-chair for the advocates on the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And then we as a country have also signed on onto this Sustainable Development Goals. So we have a 4-year period by which we have to voluntarily report on what we've done on these sustainable goals to the world. So we're doing that in July. And in order to do that, we need to have the validation of the stakeholders in these areas. So it spans all these 17 goals, and it stretches from issues on poverty, health, education, environment, energy, settlement, development. It goes all the way to look at the key areas of partnerships, issues of justice and peace, and so gender and the rest. So all these span of areas, you need to find out what people are also thinking and the direction. And this is what I term the dialogue. So for the last week, 2 weeks or so, we've engaged the ministries, the department and agencies. We've engaged development partners. We've engaged the civil society groups. We've engaged women. And these are all discussed. We've engaged the youth. We've also engaged people with disability and other vulnerable groups. And so we're basically left with 2 major groups to deal with, the traditional authority and then the parliament. And then we're through with all the discussions.
And when is that going to happen?
Well, very soon, because we're just waiting for parliament to resume. And now that they've resumed, definitely we'll deal with the leadership and then get it through. The traditional authorities, we're working through that. They have a development committee, which is a representation of the various regional traditional council, House of Chiefs, and then we'll be able to meet them and have a dialogue with them. So that is what we're doing. And we're getting very good comments. The private sector, development partners, the youth, the women, we're getting very good comments coming from their end on some of the preparations that we've made and some of the measurements that we are putting to the world that we've been able to attain. So we look at what we presented in 2017 and the progress we've made in 2022. And that is where the comments are coming from. The feedback is coming from. And we are making very, very good. We're receiving comments and getting a very good report. for which I'm sure by middle June we should have finalized.
And you spoke of the SDGs and the 17 goals. Now we have less than 10 years into 2030.
Yes.
How are we going to make sure that where we are lacking behind, we fix it? And what is your assessment of the NDP's assessment of Ghana's situation right now concerning 2030?
It's very interesting, from 2016, 2015, NDPC made certain projections in terms of what we need to be able to attain this goal by 2030. So we started a real implementation from using the medium-term plans. We started from 2018. What we have done in Ghana is that we've integrated all the goals into our national plans. So by implementing our national plans, we are at the same time working towards attaining these targets. So we looked at the projections, and now we were on course. It was very, very good when we started from 2016. 2017 we're all smiles.
But is it attainable before we get to 2030? Is it attainable, the 17 goals that we are supposed to get
Not
to?
all of them.
Not all of them.
All of them.
Let's group them. Which of them are attainable? Which of them won't we be able to?
In fact, some of them have already been attained. Some of them. And the issues, some of the targets on education by far, and many of them have been attained. Parity have been attained. Quality of our education is quite improving. And then also access to education. So it's one factor that we really monitor and pushing that we should be able to get there. And if you look at
if you say access to, sorry to come, but if you say access to education, is it just about somebody goes to the classroom to read and learn? Is that a target?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's one asset, one part of it. Physical access to education. And we're saying that Ghanaian children, given the percentage who are entering school, is very encouraging that we'll score 100% by 2030. Every child would have been into school. The other thing is the quality of learning. The quality of learning, we use issues on English, mathematics, reading, mathematics, and also introduction to critical thinking, which is being able to do analysis and others. And we look at that. When we started from 2017 measuring, it was quite low. The measurements in 2021 indicate that we've gone a leap and bounds, in fact, up the game. And this is not something that it's even measured by us. At the global level, which is measured by World Bank, we're also doing quite well. The caveat here is that if you look at the middle income countries and where they are, then relatively we need to do a lot to be able to catch up. But in terms of progress, there's a big progress that we've been able to make. And we know that come 2030, we'll be at a level which is expected of us, of upper middle income country by then.
Hopefully. Hopefully. But then talk of education, I know that, or I've read somewhere that just about 18% of students who graduate from senior high school are able to enter the universities. How about that? Is that not worrying?
One of the challenges, 18.8 to be specific, at the last measurement. But there has been a lot of progress also from the time it was measured up to where we are.
What's the percentage?
And our target, let me say that we've added on from 18.8. The rest we haven't added in terms of percentage, but in terms of numbers, because it's moved up. The number who entered second university last year and this year, and we'll get a figure done, and it's moved up. Our target is to have at least 40% of those who move from secondary school to enter tertiary education by 2030. And getting to the 40%, we know we'll attain it. We are looking at the infrastructure provision. We are looking at the number of universities which are coming up, tertiary institutions. And we are looking at the big push towards the emphasis on technical, vocational, and engineering training, mathematics and science, which are coming up in bounds. And the absorption capacity of this university depends on the infrastructure which is made available. And a lot of resources have been put into that. And so doing that projection, we know that given the trajectory, we should be able to hit the 40% by 2030. And even more. In fact, we expect to go beyond that. It's one of the targets we know that we could do better.
Yes. That'd be great news. Yes. And I know that when we talk of parity, you know that about 86.6% of Ghanaians are now able to use electricity and all that, which is some good news right there.
Very, very good.
Let's still talk about the SDGs and aid attainability. Synergizing the work of stakeholders into yours and make sure that we attain our goals. How has it been like?
It's been quite good because that's where we've strengthened. It's one area which I'm passionate, about. You look at first, it has been just a government push. But now we're bringing in strongly the role of the private sector, civil society, traditional authorities. And the last report that we made in 2019 to the UN, that was one area which stood out. That partnership, if you want a case in the world to look at, go to Ghana. Because we created a platform where there was leadership by all these stakeholders in the process, and they were able to comment on. To the extent that when we even presented the national report, there was also a parallel report which was presented by civil society groups, virtually confirming the areas where government is indicated at that time that we're doing well. We're going through the same process now, that we want civil society to also think through some of the figures that we are providing and telling the world. If it is not factual, you indicate. And also another area that we're bringing up from them is the cases. The cases that we are going to present is not government cases. These are cases which are coming from our stakeholders, civil society, NGO, private sectors, and all that, to confirm these figures. So they are not just arithmetic figures, but they are reality, which are also expressed in the quality of the product and the output which are coming up, confirmed by our stakeholders. And we think that this partnership is something that we need to use in our development reporting, even at the country level.
So let's now talk about the AU's Agenda 2063 and how we can tie that into the SDGs. Now, if you are questioning yourself or asking yourself what the AU Agenda 2063 is, let me give you a brief background. It says Agenda 2063 is Africa's blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into a global powerhouse of the future. It is the continent's strategic framework that aims to deliver on its goal for inclusive and sustainable development, and is a concrete manifestation of a pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. Quite interesting one there. Tell me more about this.
Yes, the AU Agenda 2063, it's also a document which expresses, as it's indicated, African development path. It also comes up with a number of targets which countries should have attained within a certain period. Many of them coincide with the SDGs. So what we have done in Ghana, we've put all this together into our national plan. So by pursuing our national plan, we are invariably also implementing the AU Agenda 63. One of the key things which it brings up, which might be a bit different from the SDG, has to do with the issue of inclusiveness, the issue of governance, inclusive governance, which is important. We are very fortunate in this country. We established ourselves a genuine, predictable governance system from 1992. So we don't fall into that situation that much. But there are others where other African countries are quite vulnerable. The other thing which is also key is the creation of wealth, mobilizing revenue. And a lot of that, we're also quite fortunate because our president is championing that. Ghana Beyond Aid, Africa Beyond Aid last week, and this week is being the head of a lot of the African Development Bank meetings. Africa Beyond Aid. How do we attain that? So it's a question for us. And it all depends on our development path and what we set for ourselves. We've gone through a situation where in many African countries, we're still relying on primary production and exporting virtually raw materials.
Exactly.
And this is the challenge for many of us. So we have the agriculture sector, the primary sector growing, mining, oil production, cash crops from agriculture. And then we export the raw form. So it jumps over the manufacturing and industrial segment of development, and we export. And then eventually we need to import goods. So trade then picks up. All the services that goes with trade, insurance, banking, and others begin to go up. So we have two pillars at the end which are growing: primary production, services. And the one which is meant to sustain these two processes, manufacturing and agriculture, has always been challenged. Manufacturing and industry has always been challenged. Challenge in the sense that we don't add value to many of the things that we get from the agriculture sector and mining sector and others, and export them in the raw form. So this big picture in the middle is what Africa is pushing at. And so all these issues about continental trade facilitation is supposed to push that. And in Ghana, the industrial policy, which is in the 10 segment industrial policy, the champion of it is the 1D1 process, are all a means to regalvanize these industrial manufacturing sectors so that there will be a link between our primary production and the manufacturing industrial processing. We can add value. And once you add value, it solves a lot of our problems. Jobs are created, economy is strengthened. We don't rely on loans from outside and others. We're able to grow our resources. And once we do that, you realize that it also complements both ends. The service sector will grow, the primary sector will have a ready market locally, and all those problems that we have with exports and other things will be cut off. And so this is the kind of trend, long-term perspective, Africa is pushing that, and what Ghana has also equally expressed in its national development on a path. If you're able to do that, we've created a real sustainable development path of linkage. And not only that, what do we need to bring up this industrial and manufacturing process? First, a lot of people think first about resources, but it's skill. It's knowledge.
Is that not where we ask the question, how to tweak the mental health status of the young ones who believe that agriculture to them is soiling yourself and all that? But we know that hungry and techie are thriving on agriculture. How do we do that?
It's a kind of agriculture. Because if what my grandmother used, the hoe and the cutlass, and you want me to use the same trend, then it becomes a challenge for the youth. But if you step it up to the next level, where they can apply the science they've learned in school, the agriculture science they learned in school, the biology they learned in school, the engineering they learned in school, the business they learned in school, they're able to apply it in the farming, in the agriculture, and the very thing our grandfathers and mothers did, they put it to the next level, then it becomes attractive. So now I hear names, agribusiness, mechanization, and others. I love that. That psychological shift of naming alone becomes attractive.
But this could be agribusiness. We might converge at a particular place to talk about agriculture. But somebody will tell you, even if I go there, after that, how do I fund my business, which is the agribusiness? How do I do that?
This is very important and falls again in Agenda 2063. Opening up avenues for resourcing and providing resources for farmers. So if you look at that, it is targeting. We heard about a lot of these, youth in agriculture, and we think that it's a matter of providing some hoe and cutlass and fertilizer and seedlings, and that is no. It goes beyond that. It goes with knowledge. It goes with skills. How many people haven't we trained in a lot of these agriculture diploma and certificate institutions? But at the end of it, they come out looking for a job, competing with the very people whom do not have skills. They have skill in a specialized area. But how do we get the funding to these people? So the funding stream is one thing the plans have really articulated, and the government is implementing that. One of the essence of the National Development Bank is to provide funding, on-lend funding to banking institutions that can target these areas. Modernizing agriculture, and particularly looking at the youth.
Is that all the solution we need, the bank?
Well, that's one. That is one. The other thing, because I really believe, it is not government, creating jobs, but it's the private sector being enabled to be able to create these jobs. And the private sector, the means of getting the private sector is using the regular and the developed financial streams, which is important. Introducing our young, entrepreneurs to some of these processes is a way of building them. And I see it. I go to the university campuses, my own children. The things that they think about today is not what I thought about yesterday. They are thinking about setting up their own businesses, even when they were in the universities.
But is that not what the finance minister kind of referred stated some time back, that the public sector is full, and so with the young ones, we have to create our own jobs and all that. But then the mentality here is, after creating your own job, after having a plan, how do you get the money? How do you get the fund? They will keep telling you, is now who knows you or not even who you know. Who you know. That phrase, is it a kick?
There are a lot of avenues, and we need to explore. And that's where these young entrepreneurs are also looking at. And therefore, there's a meeting point. There's a whole program which has been set up with funding. Ghana Enterprises Agency is providing one avenue. There's a National Enterprise Investment Program, which is also looking at that. And then you go to even the very micro level, who doesn't require a lot of paper filling. You know, Maslow and even the development authorities are providing microfinance. So there are a lot of that which we need to explore and look at one which meets with the aspirations and where we want to go in terms of our enterprise that we want to set up. And I think that if we're able to meet these funding opportunities with the skills and the knowledge and the zeal of the youth today, we'll be able to, you know, jump over the next hurdle. Because these are things we did not have. When I finished school, I was looking for a job from the public sector. I never thought of starting my own business. I only thought of starting a business when I was way off. I'd lectured in the university. I've been outside to look at it. Then I came and said, look, I need to set up a business. But my children, right from university, my daughter right from university said he wants to set up a business. So wow, and she's doing it.
Will you also say that it also part of the curriculum in the schools? Is it too much of theory and not the practicals? It's a big problem. We've been talking about this over and over again. How theoretical it is in schools.
You see, there is a real. If you want to industrialize, if you want to bring the technology as to facilitate development in your country, it starts from your education. And that is the drive. Some people complain, oh, there are too many policies in the education sector. No, but that is how you transform things. You transform in an integrated manner. You look at all the facets and you initiate a change process where they can merge and change things.
Isn't it time for change?
This is it. And that is why you're getting all these results from the education sector, looking at the emphasis on entrepreneurship, on technology, on the sciences, on creativity throughout the education process, which is very, very important. We might not have enjoyed that much of that opportunity, but today that is the kind of change we are bringing into the system, because that is the new world. And I love that when I saw all these policies which have been proposed and not only resting on paper, as it has been in the past, but really being implemented, and we've seen it in our lifetime. And we think that that is where it is. We don't need to jump into the sky to look for it. There are too many examples in the world now that we can look, and if you don't copy, you can even mimic it somewhere else, and it might yield result. We've seen it. It's all around us in the world. And that is where I take a lot of inspiration, that if we are on that direction, then we are getting there.
And from Dr. Kodjo Mensah-Abrampa, the Director General of the National Development Planning Commission, there are too many examples out there that you might just want to tap in there, take yours and work on it. We'll be back from this break with more. Stay with us. Welcome back, and you're still watching us here on 101. I am Bryce Nanako-Siamanin, and I'm still in the studio with Dr. Kodjo Mensah-Abrampa, Director General for the National Development Planning Commission. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
I want us now to focus on Ghana's industrial revolution. Yeah. Where are we now, and how does it look like?
Let me say that in our plan, the period between 2018 to 2021 was seen as the foundation. And then it continued from 2022 to 2025. That we're preparing ourselves for a takeoff. Preparing ourselves means that we must strengthen the systems, get the structures right, being able to strengthen the public service, being able to engage the private sector, being able to bring in particularly the youth. So this was the strategic thinking within these 8 years. And if you see that it's expressed right in the coordinated program of the government from 2017 to 2024, and then also well taken up by the medium-term plan. Going forward, in terms of industry, it is even taken up with we have what we call a 30-year Ghana infrastructure plan, which details what we need to do for our industrialization process to be able to survive and take off to the next level. For now, the systems are being created. But as I indicated, the industrial development depends on being able to tap into our primary production system. we have bauxite, we have iron and steel right on our soil, we have manganese. These three things, in addition to energy sources for which we have, are the basis of industrialization everywhere in the world. We have them here on our soil. We're not going to import. And therefore, we need to really harness these resources that we have. And that is why we have this integrated aluminum industry. This whole stretch, looking at this full chain, is a huge basis of our industrial development. Turn around this room. There's nothing which you have where there's no aluminum in it. Steel, which is coming from our iron deposit. We have some in northeastern Ghana, the central part, western part of the Ghana, huge deposits. If we're able to tap that, it becomes another key ingredient for industrialization. Basically, these are the two where they meet. And then you need the manganese to harden it. And then finally, you need the energy sources for which we have. So what have we done? So if you look at the plan, the medium-term plan, there are commissions that have been created. GISDEC is one of them for iron and steel. Then we have GIDEC for aluminium. And this is looking at the combination. I am not surprised that these car assembly plants are finding their way here. It is not by mistake, because basically it begins with assembling and then you go to the manufacturing.
Yeah.
And what are the two key ingredients? It's aluminium and steel. And they are here in Ghana. So the private sector who are looking forward, this becomes the biggest attraction for us, because we have created the space for it. There's a whole plan which is responding to it, which is being implemented. It's not lying there. It's being implemented. The GISDEC, the GIDEC, they are all being implemented. And in addition to that, there's a whole energy sector plan, which is part of what I mentioned, the infrastructure plan, looking at it in 30 years. So if you want to invest in this country, you can just come and look at it. In fact, this is right in front of us, the plan itself. And identify how systematic we have looked at these three areas. A combination of them becomes the basis of industrial revolution. But even beyond that, industries are served by a hierarchy of other low industries. So the small-scale processes, which links up with this, the other, what we call the igniting industry, which goes with it. It's what we have expressed it in the one district, one factory process which is going on. The agro-processing, the tapping into these, assembly plants and all that which have been created. It is not by accident, but these are the triggers of the revolution. And if you use this first segment of our long-term perspective to create that, I tell you, we are on course. And as I said, there are many countries who have gone through this path, and we need to learn and go through it.
I like that you mentioned a 30-year plan for Ghana's industrial revolution, and also, if you want it, come for it, it's available. Availability, how do I get a plan? Like you mentioned, how do I apply for it? Where is it online? How do I get it?
It's and these days you can't hide documents. It's right on our website. You can just tap in GIP, the Ghana Industrial Plan, Infrastructure Plan, and then you can also tap into Ghana at 100. All these documents are there. The medium-term plan, the coordinated program, all these plans are on our website. And being the private sector or civil society or NGO or public sector, you only need to tap into that. And you can see some of these, because that is what we use in attracting investors. Investors want to know. If you go on the Ghana Investment Promotion Council, a lot of these documents are also there for people to tap in. And that is very important.
This point takes me to my next question, where you mentioned that these are some of the things that investors look before they come into the country. Now, for some time now, which I know you might have heard this, we've had some people talk about Ghana having a long-term developmental plan, that any government that comes into power will have to abide by that, and wouldn't have to go against that or have their own new agenda and all that.
A plan, a long-term plan, is a perspective plan. It's aspirational. It's telling you the direction we want to go, having gone through real consultation and all the technical requirements that are demanded to get us there. So, National Development Planning Commission since 2015 started working on such a document and completed in 2018, which is a long-term perspective. It's a big document, very big document. I think it's 500 pages or so in all the sectors. So that is it. And then when you have that perspective plan, that is our document. It's a technical document, so many calculations, so many things. But then we sum it up in a very brief 40-page document, which is called Ghana at 100. 40 years at that time would take us to 100 years. By the time we're 100 years. So we have this aspirational document, which gives to us some of the things we must do to be able to become a developed country, because that is our aspiration. By the time we're 100, we should be a developed country. We should have a per capita income of 50,000. We should have a nominal, GDP of about 3.4 trillion. Everybody, every Ghanaian should have access, easy access to social facilities, and then also the country must be industrialized. Okay, these are the projections. In order to attain that, then you go back, you bring it back up to today. What do we do today? So that is the kind of, traverse we need to make over the 40 years. And then you break it down into medium-term plans. The medium-term plans are quite specific because they are within the range of about 4 years. And so within the first 4 years, what do we do? The second 4 years, the third 4 years, and then you move on and on. So that is how planning is done. Planning is logical. If you pick the long-term plan, the key thing is the aspirations and what you want to do, and give information as to how you got there. So that is the perspective. Then you come to the medium-term plan, which you prepare with cogent reasons and everything. And that is where you present to Parliament for approval. Within the 4 years. Okay? And tactically, what we have is that it doesn't coincide with the government period.
I'll come to that, but that isn't it a problem where as a country we have a Ghana at 100 policy, you want to bring it all down to medium term and all that, but it's governments come into power and they have their own policies and it doesn't go with what has been planned or how they've been scheduled.
Let me say
how does that affect the country in general and all that?
Let me say
and how do we
that,
even enforce such implementation of such policies?
Let me say that government policies. I'm just looking for one person who will look at all government policies, pick the plan, and say that these policies are not in the plan, and the plan is not. Policies are not responding to the plan.
But you see, it makes me want to take it back to the fact that we have government after government, and anytime a government comes to power, we hardly see the new government continue projects started by the previous ones. These are all problems.
You see. And again, let me ask the question: how many of these projects are not continued? There are some which are not continued. Yes, I agree. But generally, we have done studies and picked up all these documents and looked at that. And there are more than 70% of these projects which are started by previous governments are continued. Unless there is a substantial technical difficulty. For many of that, we don't look at that. For many of them, and that is one thing that was noted, many governments in the past negotiate for projects. Okay? And projects, you have to look at the full cycle of the project. Some of the full cycle of the project is 8 years, some of them 12 years. But governments develop the projects, and many of that, the full cycle of the project is not taken into consideration. So you have funding which might be able to fund the first 3 years, the first 4 years of the project. And then negotiation is done. The first 4 years, which might be the first phase, is negotiate for funding received. Funding is received for the first 5 years, first 3 years. And then a new government is elected. Which means when you come, you need to look for funding to continue.
Why don't you do that?
And that is where economics comes in. Because very often, a lot of our infrastructure will depend on external funding for it. And when you go and look at a funding, sometimes when you do the first 3 years, the project is stuck because the funding is ended. And you must begin to look for the second phase. The contractors are still waiting, and they might be charging. So by the time you have a funding opportunity to continue, there is always an arrears created on that same project, which is an additional cost.
But is that enough to abandon an already started project?
No, it's not abandoning, but then it becomes a choice. It becomes a choice. Okay? And if I'm an investor, you bring a project brief of a project which is starting, a new one which is fresh, which I can put my name on it as an investor, as a sponsor. And then the full stretch is there, we can give you the same avenue. And then you have a project which you abandoned because you didn't have the full funding the last 3, 4, 5 years. And these are all liabilities which are not contributing to the quality of the project. I hope you get it. Where would you put the money? Is it starting a new one which you can complete within 3 years or the 4 years? So these are some of the challenges. So what we have done, what has been done by the government itself is that in 2016, a law was passed, okay? The PFM Act, which makes it mandatory for a whole project cycle cost to be calculated. So before you start a project, and that is a new LI, which has also been produced 2411 in 2020. Before you start the project, you have to look at the full cost and be sure that you have a commitment of funding for the whole project streamed before you start. So whether you are government E or government B, you start the project, you know the funding stream, the full funding stream. So even if a new government is elected, the funding opportunity is there for the government to continue.
Are there any projects that we can actually pinpoint and say the continuous projects by a different government?
No, there are so many. Almost all the blocks which were started, and the numbers are there. About 21 of them were continued and completed.
Are these blocks the same blocks that are being complained by some traditional leaders that they've been left alone and all that?
You see, let me put it this way. A reanalysis was done. For some of the schools, which might be day schools, as created, you need to have a boarding facility, even for people to get to some of these schools. So it is not just completing what is there. It is completing and adding on boarding facilities. Some of them, many of them, there are additional blocks which have been built to make them viable and be able to use by these targeted communities. Okay? So there are additional things which have been done to some of them. Some of them were not just completed. Many of them were not just completed. They were completed and additional facilities provided to make what has been completed viable. And many of them have been completed. Look at the Kumasi Accra Road. It's one example of many projects because a new funding opportunity was negotiated. It has continued. My dream, which is the Amasama overpass, is a very good example of that. So these are some of the things. No Ghanaian and no leader will say that, look, this is a project, so I've abandoned it. No. There is always a reason. And I'll be very glad if we investigate the reasons. Because we have done it for many of these projects, and we realize that some of the reasons, it might be a delay. It might be that we need to add on something. It might be that we are negotiating for additional funding. They are all rational. But no government will deliberately say that because this is the name, I have abandoned it. There is always a reason. But we jump to the conclusion that because they are different governments, they've abandoned. No, there's always a reason. And very often it is technical than political.
All right. Let's now talk about government agency to support the NDPC. Tell me about that.
The government what?
Agency to support your outfit.
Agency?
Yes.
Yes, it is very important. And this is a constitutional commission, and no government will abandon NDPC. You do that at your own peril because this is the planning institution and it's supposed to guide in the process of bringing us to where we want to be. We have challenges, by the way. One of the biggest challenges has to do with our capacity. Capacity in terms of personnel and capacity in terms of ability to be able to monitor. And that is the word. Monitor all projects, programs, and plans of government. And to do that means that you need a lot of investment. Let me say that one of the biggest problems has to do with human resource capacity. And I'm not surprised because the kind of caliber of people you require at the development planning agency is very high. The kind of knowledge, the kind of skills, the kind of experience is very high. And the challenge we have is that we're just a public institution. A public institution which is on the single spine, of course. If I move just across the road to another institution, an economic institution, a development institution, sometimes I may be taking 5-7 times that. So why do I have to come and embed myself at NDPC? That's the challenge we have. So we have a very high attrition rate, particularly the skills that you need. Economists, spatial planners, social policy analysts, monitoring and evaluation experts. These are high caliber people and we are competing with the private sector, development agencies, international development partners. So it is a challenge for me in particular. That's what I've experienced since I came there. And so it is a challenge. The other thing has to do with the resources that are required in order to undertake tasks. And our resource requirement is periodical. Periodical in the sense that sometimes you require a lot within 1 year, and sometimes you require quite moderate within 1 year. And these are things that we need to look at. So if the usual thing of a budget, oh, last year it was this, so this year let's add on a little, it doesn't work for development plan agencies. Because when you are preparing a medium-term plan in 1 year, it is huge. When you are doing a perspective plan in another, it is very huge. When in a year where you glide and you are just undertaking, if monitoring is another. When you are evaluating, a program like the SHS, a program like 1D, 1F, and you are doing an evaluation, it is huge. But these are the things we always have to negotiate and dialogue with the managers of the resources in the country to be able to respond to it. So that is our challenge. Our resources, capacity is key.
But this one very sensitive organization that plays a very big and serious role in governance and even in policies and all that. Why can't it have some special treatment? I mean, when it comes to having to even be able to pay your workers well, like you just mentioned, they might end up going to other places because it might be good there in their pockets. Why don't we resource your office to the extent that it will be so lucrative that young people with good brains want to work with you?
I like that you've mentioned that. This is something we've been negotiating with government seriously, and you'll be surprised. I wouldn't hide it. I'm supposed to have 5 directors working with me. 5 directors.
How many do you have?
I don't have a single one. So all
since
those
2018?
Not even a single one. All the others who are working with me are people who deputy directors, and I've been able to bring them to the level of providing leadership for these directorates.
What are these vacant positions for the directors?
Pardon me?
What are these positions for the directors who fail?
The policy, one in charge of policy, one in charge of plan coordination, one in charge of M&E, one in charge of research and innovation, and then the other in charge of administration.
So how then have you been working since 2018 without all these directors?
So you need to double up, and that is it. So I double down, and those are the deputy director double up, for us to cater for these vacancies. Because you need to go through the public process of recruitment, which is not the case when it comes to development agencies and a constitutional commission as such. So these are some of the challenges. You apply for technical clearance, you go for financial clearance. Sometimes it takes, up to 10 times for you to get to that. And at that time, how is the work done? So we're stretching ourselves. We're really stretching ourselves. And if I tell you my schedule for the week, you'll be surprised.
Yeah,
I
can attest to that. I can attest to that. And so
I just arrived from Dambai, on Tuesday, and Wednesday I had to go through a whole schedule of sitting on budget approvals and Minister of Finance, and then today I started the morning doing same. Today I'm sitting here. It's not ended. The weekend and all that. So and it might be worse even with my deputy directors, whom they had to do a lot of things because that is a position up them. So we need to go through a lot of discussing, training by themselves, giving them a lot of knowledge so that they'll be able to respond to that. And these are very vital positions. Director in charge of plan coordination. You are coordinating ministries. So you are dealing with chief directors. You are dealing with directors of PPME. You are dealing in some cases with ministers to be able to obtain information and be able to report on it. Because you need to coordinate schedules, you need to coordinate activities, you need to coordinate the resources, you need to coordinate the results, you need to coordinate output. Because one ministry's output could be another's input. A delay in the delivery of the output could affect a delay in a number of ministries who might be waiting on that as an input for them to initiate the process. And it's up to us to articulate this process and be able to indicate to them timelines, give them a guidance and all that. And these are professional things which you need to deliver. You need high caliber people who can dialogue and negotiate for some of these things to go on. So the machinery of development and to drive it requires highly skilled people.
Which actually scares me
and
because
more motivated. to be able to do
I'm
that.
scared right now because if the outfit that's supposed to help government know what to do from one step to the other, it's quote unquote broken. How do we fix ourselves as a country? We talk about that. We talk about that later. But then let's talk about the floods. I mean, quite a serious situation we are in. Every single year we say that this is the most serious flood we've seen. Every single year we say that the most serious, and it keeps doubling up almost every single year. We are told that yes, it's not happening just in Ghana. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in even in India. A few days ago, about 25 people died in flood. That's what we are being told. It's not just in Ghana, but we want to cry for ourselves as a country.
Exactly.
What is happening to us, and how do we fix this?
Let me say that I don't need to talk about the problem. Everybody sees it every year.
Yes.
But let's going forward. What do we need to do? And one of the things which has really captured this is also in our infrastructure plan. There is also a whole chapter which looks at floods and management of floods, drains and all that. You see the drawings all over the country. It is obvious that in a country which has a north-south flow of rivers, definitely it will gather somewhere. And unfortunately for us, most of our major cities are at locations which are most affected by also the floods. Why? Because settlements naturally grow faster on plains than on hilly areas. And therefore, there's always a tendency to grow the bigger settlements in these flat areas. Accra not being an exception, our national capital. Most of the towns are the coast, and most of the towns at what we call the transitional region, Kumasi and those parts. And then you go the next one, which has another plain, is the Tamale Enclave and all that. So that is the kind of arrangement that we have. And definitely, if you have a problem with the basins, you definitely experience it. What we have over here in the document is that in the short-term process, there's a short-term response, a medium-term, and a long-term. The short-term responses had to do with and the drains. And responding to the drains, it is not just a moral suasion issue. It has an engineering responsibility element, which is key. How to look at all these drains, because it's connected. It's an articulation. They join each other. It's like a vertebra. It moves on, and then they join at the center. And you need to design it. It's an engineering situation. Many of our settlements started as more, I call it rudimentary communities, where in my village, for instance, you place your house next to each other so that when you are going to eat, you can shout and call the person, come and join me. Okay. So drainage is something that we normally do not consider. But in the modern times, there are multiple of activities which requires us to use water. And therefore, we settle closer to water bodies and water facilities. But these things ought to collect somewhere and move out. So the settlement development is key. And if you look at the SDGs, SDG 11 is devoted for that. It's not by accident. And one of the indicators is that the number of what we call emergency situations for which number of people who die and the number of people who are injured as a result of some of these things, which means it's anticipated. Floods and all these emergencies are anticipated. But you need to plan for it. How are settlements being planned? Who plans these settlements? Who manages it? Which institutions are responsible for that? And how much resources do we give to them so that they can really respond to these very functions we have given to them? These are questions. So within the short term, we need to look at that. Who are those responsible for this? What are they doing? How do they do it? What resources have we provided? So definitely, if you have not provided the resources, you must anticipate the output.
Yeah, and that's true. And a colleague of mine, Shadrach, spoke to one of the leaders here in Ghana, the Neo Doy, and he says, and calling on President Kufuor to demolish the entire Jolu if he really wants to fight all this. And funny enough, before I came here to speak to you, I had to do my own background check, my own investigation, and I've been told that the name Jolu means bigger valley. That means it's a waterway. Let
me put it this way. In Accra, Ghana has, in fact, the last 2 years, I must say that Ministry of Works and Housing, with what we call the National Flood Control Program, targeted certain drains. And I checked before I came to get the final figure. there are more than 220 drainage projects which are ongoing in the country, and some of them completed.
Because we have the president telling us that they spent about 450 million Ghana cedi.
I'm not surprised.
Working,
it could be more than
working on
it
drainages.
could even be more than that, because I calculated the 220, put that together, and I was getting close to 1.6 billion.
It could be more than that.
Yes, it could be more than
But
that.
people are complaining that they're not seeing what is happening
You see,
from all these projects.
it's because these are the short-term measures, and I'm sure if they hadn't done that, the problem of the flooding that we are seeing today would have been disastrous. Because there are a lot of floods, in Weja, in Kasua, there are projects going on, Sakumono, all these places, and I checked. And it's not only in Accra, it's all over the country. There are a lot of drainage projects. Kumasi, Takoradi, all over, including the sea defense wall. These are all means to control this process. The other thing which is key, that is the short term. In the medium to long term, this is where it comes in. You see, the developers of these settlements, particularly in Accra, naturally there are areas which were reserved for floods and ponds. And therefore, whether you like it or not, the waters will come from the Kwape Mountain, will come from the Krobo Mountain, they will look for a place to get to the sea. So definitely they will look for places. And where they land are the ponds. So if you look at the map of Accra in the early 60s and in the late 50s, you realize that some of the buildings were on stitches. So they had pillars, and the building was on. It was not deliberate. It's not that they wanted to be fanciful or anything. No, so that the water could flow, and instead of blocking it. What happened was that we renovated a lot of these areas, and now we build them straight to the ground. It means that we block this water system. So when the water flows from the Kwapim Hills, there are drains that they pass to. Kole is one of them, Chemu and those places. But they come with a speed. The scientists will tell you, because they are coming from the mountain, they have a certain speed that they come with. So when it rains for 2 hours, and all of them collect, these channels cannot take them to the sea. They overflow. So there are natural flood areas where they have to collect. And we have built in these areas. So when they are expanding, the water is naturally expanding.
But these same buildings might have gone for permits. I've seen some buildings where they've written on them, stop work now. Others have been built and they are there, they are standing.
That is
structured, properly built, and they are standing. And later it rains and we see all this. They might have gone for permits.
So that is the other
done?
side of it. There are institutional deficiencies, and there are also individual issues which have to do with attitudes. So we need to look at that, definitely. The institutions which are supposed to do this, many of them, this is assemblies, the Land Use Planning and Authority, EPA, and the others. So these are institutions that are supposed to do that. The point is, what resource have they got to be able to monitor that? I know Land Use Planning Administration because I worked there some part of my life. And it is a challenge, big challenge. It's just recently that they've even been fairly decentralized to the districts. And how many of them have the skills, the knowledge to be able to even respond to these things? Again, it also has an additional element. When you write stop work, it has legal implications. Okay? So the authority, and then also the act or the legislative instrument which establishes it, is it thorough enough? If it is, eventually the matter will rest in the court. When it gets to the court, how expedited this could be dealt with? Some of them are there. And if you ask the director, who is my very good friend, he will tell you, some of them 5 years, 10 years, just to pull down one building because the case is resting in the court and the person is in it. So it goes through a lot. We need to look at the whole thing in an institutional dimension. And I can count. This morning I was trying to list the number of institutions that has to deal with this flood issue.
We are wrapping up, Doctor. We are wrapping up.
Many of them. So it's a big issue. What this government is doing, there's a project which we started, it's also in the infrastructure plan, GARRET, the Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated Development. And part of it is to deal with this drainage issue. Building a pond at Atomic so that you can retain the water coming from the Kwapim Hills and then gradually release the water through the drains. This is one of the biggest response we can put to this.
Doc, I think we have to do a part two of this.
Yes.
Yes, we have to do a part two of this. But I've been here with Dr. Kodjo Mensah-Abrampa, who's Director General for the National Development Planning Commission. We'll be talking about Ghana and how exactly can we properly have a country as good as the others. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for coming, sir.
It's a pleasure.
I'm grateful.
It's a pleasure.
Wish you again some other time. Bye.